Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. My name is Jordana Thompson, and I'm the program coordinator for JA of New Mexico. Thank you so much for attending our virtual career speaker series event. This program is open to JA students across the state of New Mexico and highlights business professionals, entrepreneurs, and innovative thinkers from a variety of industries. Each featured speaker will share details about their education, job, and career journey. During our speaker's presentation today, if you have any questions, go ahead and write them down or put them in the chat box, and we will address those during the Q&A portion of the event. Today, we are very excited to kick off the new year and welcome Will Martinez, the president and publisher of Albuquerque Business First. Thank you so much, Will, for being here today. I'll go ahead and mute myself, and then the floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. I really appreciate it. I'm blessed to be here and glad to kick off the year of this series. So yeah, I'm hoping to leave everyone with just a couple of things today about business in New Mexico and being your best self. So I'll give you a little bit of a background on my journey and how I got to where I'm at, and looking forward to taking questions at the end. So I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, born and raised right here. My dad is a cop and basically has served in that capacity and then with the military for his whole life. So very much a staunch, strict household for us growing up. And then my mom was an APS teacher. So she taught for 28 years. I was just telling Jordana, and retired last year. So this is her first holiday season without having to go back to teaching, which she was very happy about, but also sad and missed the kiddos. So yeah, growing up, it was very much, I don't know. I was such a nerd. I was preparing for this, and I really my parents had to push me out of the house. The only things that saved me were athletics. So I played baseball and football. I went to Manzano High School, where I actually met my wife. So we met when we were 16, and Manzano was great. I love Manzano because it's one of those schools where you kind of get a little bit of everything of Albuquerque, right? You've got these really, rich kids, and then you've got kids who, are growing up in really difficult areas. And I think it's just kind of a microcosm of both the city and the state. So I was very blessed to have, I don't know, I just got everything. And it was when my mom always tells me, she goes, everybody needs to love everybody. And I always take that. So I'll circle back around to that. But that's one of my missions. And even in high school, it was making sure that I was my best self to everybody. So that sounds a little cliche, but yeah, it was a wonderful journey, and I loved athletics. That was my one thing that really it always piqued my interests, and it saved me from, like I said, being a total nerd. I was the kind of kid who ate lunch in the library. My wife still makes fun of me for that, but I liked being alone in my studies, and when I wasn't, my friend groups and everything were kind of concentrated around athletics. So the next step of my journey was, I had a really good GPA. I scored well on my ACT and SAT, but my parents were a cop and a teacher. So they did not have the kind of college funds to send me to some of the schools that I had dreamed about going. And at the time I was a little bit disappointed in it. I got into Notre Dame was my dream school, and I got into Notre Dame, and they're like, yeah, that's great, but it's $100,000 a year. Right. And so we talked a lot about the feasibility. My uncle actually is in the finance industry and works for Merrill Lynch. And I remember sitting down with him when I was 17 and just talking about even student loans and some of the things that are big life decisions when we're young. So instead of going to a big school, I went to UNM. And at the time I don't know, you hear the jokes of the university near your mom, that's kind of what it felt like. And I have to tell each of you that it was the greatest decision of my whole life. I spent $0 to go to the University of New Mexico. I got my BA and my MBA in 5 years. They have a program called the 3-2 program, which I was really blessed to go through, where I got my BA in 3 years and my MBA in 2, and basically was in and out in 5 years. And my professors were Yale graduates and Harvard graduates, and I don't take that for granted. So when I was thinking about this today, I just wanted to make sure that I shouted out the higher ed in New Mexico. And it's not just UNM. I've got a lot of friends that went to New Mexico State and Eastern and Western and New Mexico Tech, I think, which is just one of the most underrated schools in the country. And, you have it paid for. And once again, I had friends who went on to have wonderful careers coming out of MIT and, UT Austin and all these amazing schools. So I don't want to disparage them at all. But that was something when I was coming out of high school, I felt like it was it was a chip on my shoulder. And then, 5 years later, I'm like, that wasn't a chip. It was the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So, so during college, I worked at Dion's through high school. Talk about like your typical Albuquerque kid. So I was making pies for the first 3 or 4 years of my working career. And I had this great opportunity when I was a sophomore to go and work in business development at Solero Technologies. So Solero is an offshoot of the labs. They make solar cells for satellites. So high level engineering that was not me. I was working with aerospace engineers who are still a lot smarter than me, but I got to be around a lot of great minds and work just as an intern with them. So I did that for 2 years. And after 2 years, I found that I didn't want to work with engineers, that I wanted to be a master of my craft. That's what I wanted. And I still want. And I think that that's something that we all kind of strive to have. And I took a hard left turn, and not many people know that I took this left turn. I don't think even some of the JA folks know this, but I actually went and worked for the University of New Mexico's football program. So I worked for Bob Davie for 2 years and on his offensive staff, and I went back to my athletic roots. And it was total a passion thing. It was very hard and interesting. I went from getting really nice pay at Solero and a really comfortable, cushy kind of life to really making no money, doing a lot of things for free, long nights at the UNM football complex. And it was hard. It was a hard point in my life, but I learned after the 2 years, and there's a reason why I learned this, but the staff got fired. Bob Davie, when he got fired, the whole staff, when that happens in collegiate athletics, the staff kind of goes everywhere. And I had some amazing moments with the Lobos, walking onto Kyle Field at Texas A&M and doing some amazing things that I never thought that I'd be able to do. So I lived out some childhood dreams there, but I realized that I didn't want to get hired and fired at that rate. I realized that I actually wasn't enjoying football as much as I had before I was in it. Like my fun had become a job. And then the last thing was my wife, who I was looking to get engaged with at that point. I wasn't able to spend as much time with her as I wanted. And it was a big, like, kind of come to Jesus moment for myself of, is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? And my answer was kind of vehemently no. So I finished up with my MBA that year and I kind of had a quarter life crisis. I really did. And I felt like I was kind of at a failure moment. It was a really hard thing for me in my early 20s. And I think a lot of, folks in their early 20s, when they're coming out of college, you feel kind of an imposter syndrome, right? Where you have the degree and you're like, this is so wonderful, but also at the same time, what am I going to do with this? Right now it's the real world and it just kind of hits you. So I'd actually just taken one of my last finals and I looked awful. It was about probably 9:30 in the morning, and I was meeting my friends who actually own Little Bear Coffee Shop in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And they have a couple of different, I hope you all love Little Bear as much as I do, but they had just kind of opened up, and Jacob and Isaac and I were sitting down, and I was just like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know if I need to make money, right? I have an MBA, I have a graduate degree, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. And the advertising director for Albuquerque Business First walked in front of our table and was a friend of Jacob Fox's. And Jacob was like, hey, you should hire Will. And I, like, out of my slumber, I was like, please hire me. Like, I don't even know what you do, but please hire me. And he said, oh, that's really interesting. He goes, we should connect at some point. And then he walked away. And my friend said, hey, do you have your resume ready right now? And I said, I've been working on it for, months. I have it like down to a T. And he goes, let's go next door. Let's print it. Let's give it to him right now. So we did that day, and I dropped it with him. And the next week I had my first interview. And the interview was for an advertising account executive job. So I had got my MBA in marketing, and that was kind of my path towards it. And the way he pitched it to me as, hey, this is a great way for you to kind of flip your marketing degree and to talk about strategic advertising for companies. So I was like, oh, that sounds great. Can you tell me what ABF is? And so I'll tell you a little bit about what Albuquerque Business First is right now. And what it is we're actually one of 40 markets across the nation. We're part of the American City Business Journals. And originally we were just a daily newspaper. So it was daily newspaper news. So that was like the origin of the business journals. And it's kind of ramped into a whole different animal now. So really this is going to sound a little cheesy and cliche, but we're connectors in the business community. So we still have a print product that comes out, and print is a kind of a dying medium. And I know that we don't consume newspapers the way we used to, but we very much still rely on a print product, and New Mexicans love their print. But we have a digital side that both the website and newsletter blasts that go into folks' emails that is very vibrant and robust. We have about 25,000 folks who really are at the high level of business in New Mexico that read us diligently every day. So I always tell people it's kind of my parents who are a cop and a teacher had never heard of this job. When I told my uncle who worked for Bank of America in Merrill Lynch, he was like, "Oh, that's a great job, right? I read this every single day." So I got hired on as an account executive in late 2017, and I thought it was going to kind of be a year or two job. I really did. And I told them that too. I was like, "Hey, this is going to be a nice dip in my toe into the business community, and I will give you my all, and we'll kind of see how it goes." And over the last couple of years, I've just really fallen in love with it. So I spent 3 years doing exactly that. So I was a B2B account advertising executive. So I would go to, companies across the state and pitch them basically on how they could utilize our services, whether through events or print or digital, to get with other businesses, right? So I always give the example of, you send a credit union, right? You send a credit union, how do they connect with a commercial audience, right? It's really easy when we see them driving and on their commercials, and we connect with them at a consumer level, but how do they get business, right? How do they get a big construction company to do business with them? And I am that link, right? So that's what the business journals do, is we are the link between businesses. And I can help, introduce a CEO to a CEO, and I can get you eyeballs that you're not going to get anywhere else. So that's what we do at the business journals. And we have a whole newsroom, and it looks a lot like a little mini New York Times, but that's kind of what we do. So I did the advertising role for a couple of years, and the gentleman who I'd met at Little Bear actually was promoted to become the advertising director of the Orlando Business Journal. So it's another great thing about our company is we're very much intertwined, and my story will kind of come to that in a little bit. But so he went to Orlando, and I was asked to become the advertising director here. So I was like, heck yes, I'm falling in love with this, and it's becoming my passion. So I did that for another 2 years. We had a ton of success. And then right before COVID, I was asked to become basically a regional advertising director. So I took on 12 different markets, and COVID hits, I would have had to have moved. And for whatever reason, I think it was a God thing, and my wife and I still talk about this, we would have had to have made a cross-country move. And because of COVID, we didn't. So, and once again, COVID was awful for a number of reasons, but for us, it was just an interesting thing that we were about to make that move, and we ended up not having to. So we stayed in Albuquerque. I still connected with all of those markets. I did a lot of work on the East Coast. So Boston and Philadelphia and our 4 Florida markets, but the kicker was they gave me Hawaii too. And that was actually really hard because Hawaii, the time difference, it was cool. And I really loved it, but it was hard because I was taking business meetings at 8:00 at night, right? Because it's 2:00 in the middle of the day there. So that was something that I was working long hours. So, so right before Christmas of last year, our publisher who was here in Albuquerque took the job in Denver, and I was actually in Philadelphia. And they called me to Charlotte, and I called my wife and I said, I might be getting fired today. I have no idea what's happening, but I just kind of don't know, right? COVID's still, it's still affecting our business, and we just don't really know what's going on. And instead, they offered me the publisher job in Albuquerque to become the lead president of our market. And it was very humbling and very cool, but also a point in my life that I was very, very scared, and talk about imposter syndrome that just ramped up. I don't tell this to everybody, but I'll keep this here. Is I'm significantly younger than other publishers. I'm the youngest publisher in the history of the business journals. And at the time, I didn't know if I wanted that. So I definitely, one of my focuses, and something my dad has always told me, is playing baseball. He was like, see it coming in really slowly, right? Like a pitch, like a good hitter sees pitches come in really slowly, and they take their time with things. And that's something that I've taken into, and obviously I accepted the role, but this year it's been a lot about, hey, there's always gonna be a lot of stuff coming at you. How can I find a way to see it all kind of come in slowly and take things as they are, and really, make the right decisions. So I've been really blessed over the last year to have an amazing staff and come back to the business community in New Mexico. And I kind of wanted to finish on just this point of how important connections are in the state. Albuquerque is a beautiful place for a number of reasons, but I get to talk to people that I wouldn't be able to talk to anywhere else in the United States. I have counterparts in Dallas and in Philadelphia and Seattle, and it's like, I can't talk to a CEO I'll never meet with CEO of this bank or this credit union or this construction firm. But here in Albuquerque, it was so cool to have those people reach out to me within my first couple weeks of being the publisher. Like Albuquerque is so good at reaching the hand back out. And it's one of the reasons why I love this place as much as I do. So my 3 things, like I said, for my story that I kind of wanted to make sure that if I could leave you with anything, it would be these 3 things. So the first thing in my story is that failure is going to happen. And I have experienced failure in a couple of ways, and not on huge grand scales, but I truly believe it's all about how you respond. Like at some point, things are going to go wrong, and it could be in a personal situation, it could be in your professional life. But I think that, one of my favorite YouTube videos, it's a woman talking about grit. And I believe that grit is coming back from adversity and finding a way to fight through that. There's a great TED Talk on YouTube if you want to look that up. But she talks about how, the folks that go to our military academies and have great success, it's not really about your IQ or any number of things. It's about grit. It's about how hard you can get hit and you can kind of come back, right? I know that's that Rocky kind of slogan, but I truly believe that finding that in yourself and being able to rise and bring yourself back up is important. And then the second thing I think is kind of like I said at the very end, it's to see everything kind of come in slowly, right? To take your time with things and make as good of decisions as possible, and rely on those around you to help make good decisions too, your family and your friends to really see things come in, and don't be rash. Make sure that you have the time and everything in your purview to make the right decision. And then finally, like I said, I think New Mexico is a great example of this, but be good to everybody, because you never know when it's gonna kind of come back. And my journey is littered with that. It's folks like Aaron Hagenow and folks that have come back to me from kind of my previous lives where, hey, I maybe met this person for 15 minutes, but I gave them my best, right? Try and be your best self, and give them your all, whoever it is, whether it's your family or friends or your coworkers. And I think that it'll come back and pay dividends. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you're having a bad day and it's hard to kind of deliver, but I think that persevering and giving your best self, it's always going to be a positive in the long run. So that's where I'll leave you with my story. And I wish you the best in your career endeavors. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Will, for sharing your powerful and relatable story. Oh my goodness, I love that you grew up here in New Mexico. You even worked at Dion's, like all of us hear about. Just a true New Mexican story. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. I get made fun of by my friends that like I'm the token New Mexican. Like I checked off all of the boxes to be a good hearty New Mexican. So yeah, and thanks for letting me share. I appreciate this opportunity. It was a lot of fun. So
absolutely. Thank you so much. Alrighty, students and community members, we will move into our Q&A portion of the event now. So go ahead and think of some questions you might want to ask Mr. Will. I will start us off with a question. You mentioned some wonderful piece of advices that you gave us, and I've got them all written down. But I'm curious, who was your biggest influence growing up, Will? Where did this advice kind of come from for you?
Yeah, I think it was my dad. Once again, it's kind of cliched, but I took a lot from him and just his leadership style. He always says this, and I love this. And in the role I'm in now, I use it a lot, but it's like, how do I put the collective over myself, right? And so when he was in the military, it was all about his men and women that he was serving. And I think being a servant leader is really important. So I look up to my dad in a lot of ways, and I think that he's kind of modeled the leader that I am. And I definitely... I was able to see him and how he talks and how much the people that worked for him love him too. And it wasn't like a fake love. It was a genuine, like, I know this person is going to go and above and beyond for me. And he's going to look at the best of the collective and not just himself. And I think you can take that into your personal life too. And he's always been great at that. He's like the greatest dad in the whole world. And I know that hopefully everybody feels that way about their dad, but I look up to him a lot. And I think that kind of mindset of putting, service before self is something that I'll always kind of ride with. So.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Your dad sounds like an awesome guy.
He is. Yeah, he's a rock star. Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful. I've got one more question for you, and then we will throw it to our community members and students in the chat. You talked about how failure happens for all of us. Can you tell us a time maybe in your work that you had failure, that you failed, how you handled it, what happened?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories that I share about and I kind of flew by it within this, but your first year as an advertising person is always really hard. And I remember not you're set with goals, and I remember not making those goals right away. And having really good conversations with Candace Beakey, who's our former publisher, and Drew Scrimshire, and just the work will always add up, right? And I truly believe that. So if you're going through a tough time, I am this, I don't know if everybody loves this, but I don't want to sulk, right? A lot of people can sulk, and I've definitely been there too. And I've been a sulking person before too, but I've found that when failure happens, it's best to work your way out of it, right? And I think even personally, when I have a day where I'm like, I didn't feel like I gave it my all, like I'll go push myself, like I'll go for a run. Like I'll do something where it just gets me out of, like, I want to be in a winner's mindset, right? And I think that that failure is contagious, just like winning is contagious. And I think that the more that we're able to fight against that, and it's not easy. Once again, I think, like you said, Jordana, I think we all experience failure, and it's very hard to push it away at times too. And sometimes it's compounding failure too, where you don't feel like you're ever going to get out of it. And I definitely have felt that too, and experienced that. And I think that the biggest thing is just to kind of continue to push forward. And I think that going back to what I said about my first year as an advertising executive is I just told myself, nobody's going to outwork me, right? Like nobody's going to outwork me. And if failure comes, then failure comes, but I will have put my best foot forward. And I think that you can take that back into your life too, right? Like, okay, X isn't happening. I'm going to work and I'm going to see it through. And I'm going to figure out strategically, like I said, in one of the things I talked about was seeing things as they are. And then, you kind of make adjustments. So I don't pretend to be failure proof, and it happens a lot. And I'll have 2 or 3 days a month, I think, where I come home and I'm just like, like that just wasn't great. But I think that finding a way to not let those things compound is a big thing for me.
Absolutely. I love that. Not sulking and sitting in that failure.
Yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. I think that, and it's, like I said, it's easy to get pushed down into, but you got to find a way to build yourself back up.
Absolutely. Wonderful. All right. Well, we've got a few questions here in the chat for you, Mr. Will. We will start off with this first one here. What was an obstacle that you had to overcome when you first started high school and college?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that so my college and high school experiences were both very similar, and I'll tell you why. I think that going into them, it took almost a full year for me to get kind of acclimated to that new space, and I think that high school specifically, this is I don't tell people this a lot either, but I actually. So in 8th grade, I actually was taking honors geometry because my beautiful mother was able to get me into classes in middle school earlier. But I had to ride a bus to Monzano when I was in 8th grade, and I kind of got like slapped in the face with high school life. And I remember I had a rolling backpack, and I was like, oh my gosh, like these big kids, like they are like are gonna know that I'm like I know that I'm not a high schooler. So I think that one of the challenges that high school brings you is you're kind of, and college too, you're kind of becoming an adult, right? Like it's kind of like a next step into adulthood, both of them. So not only the academic rigor, but your social, your social life is kind of in flux at that point. And I think it happens, like I said, at the beginning of high school and of college, where you're losing friends and you're gaining friends, and you have to kind of grapple with everything that life is bringing you at that point. And I think that when you talk about obstacles, I think it's just that your kind of life is in flux for a little bit. And it's about finding that balance between, okay, I want to be a great student. I want to be a good friend to all of my friends. I want to be good to my family. If you're an athlete or you're in drama or you're doing something like that, putting your best foot forward in that too. And it's hard. Talk about another really hard time of life. But I think that the biggest thing is being able, I would say this too. I think that for my mental health too, it was always really important to keep my friends and family really close. And I think getting through obstacles was always easier when I was able to talk it out. And also when I was able to physically work it out too. I think that sports really helped with some of those things and creating friendships and doing those things. And even at a college level, I think that getting involved in your, whether it's, I had, my wife was in a sorority and I was able to kind of, figure out ways through student government to stay involved. And I think that any way that you can attach yourself to a group and get yourself kind of feeling like, hey, I have a purpose here at this new place, I think that helps kind of overcome some of those maybe early challenges that you'll feel in the first weeks to months that I know we've all felt in our past. So.
great advice. Thank you so much for that, Will.
Yeah.
Couple more questions here. Since you are born and raised in New Mexico, do you prefer red or green chili? Have
I
to know.
Yeah, I'm a green guy for sure. It's so sad though. I think as I get older, my stomach, just the spiciness of foods, like I feel like an old man. Like I have to take 3 Tums before and after. But I do. I'm a green chili preference guy. But yeah, I enjoy it as long as you can because that hit me a lot younger than Mike. It's so sad. But yeah, I just went to Flying Star this morning and I went avocado on my burrito instead of green chili because I knew I was doing this. So it's kind of sad, but I'm a green guy for sure. So
Green chili, enjoy it while you can.
yeah, seriously, that's my slogan. Forget everything else. Green chili, yeah.
Awesome. And I think we've got one more question here. And if any other folks have, or students on the call have questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat. But someone asked, now that you're publisher of Albuquerque Business First, do you have any other career or professional goals? Since you said you are very young to be a president and publisher, are there any other goals that you have
Yeah,
for your career?
that's a great question. One of my goals here within, and I really want to stay within my organization. So I think that this will probably be, hopefully my last career, right? And I'm really looking forward to that. I want to continue to build up our organization though. We are really very focused on Albuquerque, right? It's in our name, Albuquerque Business First. But I have really, over my first, 12 months, done kind of the legwork, and my staff has done the legwork. A lot of it has been them, but of making us a statewide publication. So we go, down to Las Cruces a couple times a month. We had our first event in Santa Fe last year with the Santa Fe mayor and Mayor Keller from Albuquerque, and kind of we're talking about bridging the gap. We say that word a lot. We want to be the bridge between these business communities. So one of my goals is to continue to kind of take the business community in southern New Mexico and the business in central and northern New Mexico and kind of bring them together. And maybe we can be kind of the link to them as business communities. So I also think that our name at some point in the next couple of years might change and shift to something more comprehensive of the whole state. So I know that there's a lot of lawyers on our staff that are probably like, please don't say that. But yeah, I would like for that to happen. And I don't know if it will or not, but we are the business journal for the state, and that's what I want us to be. So that's, like I said, that's something that I'm looking forward to doing. And I think that the back half of that is just furthering my connections. I want to be a really my favorite. So I got really close with the publisher of the Cincinnati Business Courier. He's an amazing man, and his thing was, he goes, when a new business comes to town, you should be the first one that they want to meet because they know that you can connect them to everybody that they want to know. And I know I'm not there yet, but one of my goals is in the next 5, 10, 15 years is to be, when a new business comes to town, I want to meet with Will and the Business Journal here, right? And that's my whole staff, our reporters, our editors, our advertising, our event folks, because they will help me get to where I need to be in the business community. So that's a big goal of mine, and I am looking forward to hopefully achieving it with my staff. Because like I said, I do have to mention my staff too, because they're I can't brag about the 14 of them enough. They are just rock stars, and they make our ship sail. And I think that I know that that's another thing that I would say is my goal is to continue to foster that. And I want to be a place where we are recruiting people that want to retire with us too. I've heard that a little bit lately, and I like that. I want to recruit people that want to stay here and build this thing, with me. So that was long-winded. I hope that was okay. Yeah.
It was perfect. I love that. Lots of career goals in there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think we got one last minute question in the chat. Mr. Will, if you could go back and tell your 17-year-old athlete self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, athlete self. That's interesting. Yeah. So I played quarterback in high school, and I was really little, and I still am really little. I'm not a huge guy. I'd probably tell myself I need to slide and avoid more tackles. That's probably the number one thing. But no, I think that I would tell myself that just because sports end, your athletic career doesn't end. I still try and go to the gym. I'm not a musclehead by any means, but I go to the gym, a couple of times a week. My mom and I run together in the foothills a couple of times a week. I just think that being an athlete has been an important part of my life, and it sucks too, because I think when you're an athlete in high school and in college, and I never suited up in college, but I know a lot of college athletes, and I worked for obviously college athletes, and it's hard when you get retired, right? It's not like we're all going to be in the NFL or NBA and WNBA and somebody tells us that we have to retire. Sometimes you have to retire yourself, and that's really hard to take off that jersey for the last time. But I think I would tell my 17-year-old self that this is never going to stop, right? That you're just going to have to find that athletic itch and that competitive itch in different ways. So yeah, I think that's what I tell myself.
I love that. Just gotta keep going for that itch, but it might not look the way that you think it will.
Absolutely.
I love
Yeah,
that. That's
definitely.
great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so very much, Will, for joining us on our Career Speaker Series event today. Before we log off, just a couple of announcements. Following this presentation, you will be asked to complete a post-program mindset survey. We would really appreciate your participation in evaluating our programs. So educators, please make sure you share the link with students to the survey. One other thing, please note that these events do happen monthly. We will be hosting these once a month on the second Wednesday. Please join us next month on February 14th as we welcome Jessica Duvernay, a consultant with respect and independent fractional leader focused on product design and startup strategy. That was a mouthful, but I will let her explain all of that to you next month on February 14th. Please keep an eye out for those registration links in your email. Once again, thank you so much, Will, for sharing your story with us. And to everyone on the call, have a wonderful day and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Jordana. Bye, everybody.